I'm Bob WP, and I'm a woo-aholic. Believe it or not, you thought I was going to say something else there, didn't you? I bet you were. But anyway, Bob WP is not pronounced Bob Whoop, as it has been pronounced when I've been to government offices. It is Bob WP, and I do have a last name, as you can see that this slide proves. I just want to tell you a little bit about me. You're looking, my God, a timeline. But it gives you an idea where I'm coming from. In '82, my first computer, Radio Shack Trash 80. It was a unique thing. I was doing programming, and that, I believe, is why I never did programming again, was that particular computer. Then in '92, I started my first business, blah, 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 went through the years. In 2007, I discovered WordPress. 2009, I did the Woo. What the hell's do the Woo? That was the first time I used a Woo theme. Then, in 2011, I did the Woo Woo, which was WooCommerce. Now, during that time before WooCommerce, and even before WordPress, I was fascinated by e-commerce. And I said, wow, I gotta get into e-commerce. I gotta. It's almost like I wanted to shove it down my throat because I thought, money. That's what I thought. Basically, e-commerce is money. So I tried a few things. One of them was I started a stock photography site using shopping cart on that platform. It was ugly, it was horrifying, and nobody bought anything. But as I went on, I thought, okay, I still got to do e-commerce. For some reason, it was just a bug in me. I needed to do e-commerce. Well, every time I tried something with e-commerce before WooCommerce, I was very unsuccessful. And it was like, I could not grasp it. It was, all I thought about was WooCommerce and e-commerce, well actually e-commerce before WooCommerce, is all about just having a big shop selling products. And that was the illusion I had. What I didn't realize at that point was I was looking at e-commerce all wrong. Now, you got to look back. 2010, I started my training. So I was doing anything from workshops to on-site training with small business, corporations, to one-on-one training in person, to one-on-one training online. And as I started doing those things, as WooCommerce crept into my site in 2011, I kept looking at it and thinking, God, e-commerce, I've got to do something with e-commerce. The problem was, I didn't realize I'd been doing e-commerce for so long, because basically I was selling online. I had that same illusion, like I said before, that it was going to be all products. I had to sell products to be an e-commerce person. I had to sell products to have an e-commerce shop or an e-commerce experience. And that is what really screwed me up. So at that time, I discovered a couple things. One of them was that what I was trying to do, when I told you before, I was trying to force e-commerce down my throat. I wanted to do it. So e-commerce came before everything else, which was totally backwards. What I didn't realize is that I have to do what I'm doing best, and bring e-commerce into the fold. So I started looking at my training. I started looking at all the ways I could put e-commerce and WooCommerce into my site. Now, the beauty of this was that once I got it in there, for the following 5 years as I was doing training, it was kind of like that holding spot on my site. It always existed, but it always did something different along the way. The second thing I realized at that point was keep it simple. Now, you're probably thinking, nope, e-commerce, simple, those are not two words that actually go together. But what I realized is that e-commerce is just like everything else with WordPress. You want to keep it simple. Is WordPress simple? Not really. Is e-commerce simple? Not really. Is WooCommerce simple? not really, but you want to keep it simple in the beginning, and you want to start with the minimum, and that's what I did. I started dabbling in it. And I think a lot of shop owners, a lot of people that I talk to, go into e-commerce thinking they're going to conquer the world, they have the world as an audience, and that's why they get into it. Kind of my illusion back pre-2010. And it was a challenge for me to start looking at it as, I'm selling online. I'm doing it all the time because I'm constantly morphing all of my services over the years. And as I morphed those services to one to another, I would look and say, okay, there's WooCommerce sitting there. How can I use it? I kind of did it a little bit backwards that way because it was a tool that was always there for me. And I realized I could use it in ways that people didn't really think of using it. And I could keep it as that solid base in my site. Now, you may think this is one insane thing here, but this is actually not the most plugins I've ever had on my site. I think the most plugins I've ever had is 72. Now you're saying, okay, Bob, you're not a big online shop. You sell online services, you blog, whatever. How can you have 72 plugins? And how can you live with 72 plugins? Well, I did pare it down to 58 at one point. 18 of those were WooCommerce extensions. They were WooCommerce plugins, or they were somehow integrated with WooCommerce. And I did a lot of testing to make sure things happen, but I went back to that simple thing, and the reason I use plugins so much and use the right ones and get them to behave with each other is because I want to keep it simple. I'm not a coder. I have a design background. I have no desire to really design anymore. I want to plug and play a theme. I want to plug and play with plugins. I want things to work. I want it to function the way I want it to. I don't customize. I don't worry about any of that. So I'm always looking at ways to use plugins the most effective way that I possibly can. Now, how many of you, I'm just curious, how many of you have over 50 plugins on your site? Oh my God. Okay, now I do feel bad. How many of you have less than 3? Okay, I just had to check. That had nothing to do with anything but my own curiosity. So, back to the plugins. These were what I was using at the time. I was using, these are the ones, these aren't all the plugins, but these are all the WooCommerce related plugins I was using one way or another. Some of them I've taken off, some I've put back on. I broke my site out into 4 sites now, so I don't have them all on one site anymore, but they are all the ones that I've used, and really they're all the ones that I love. I don't hesitate getting an extension when I need it for WooCommerce. Because again, I just want functionality. I want my customers to have the experience. I want them to be able to buy my services and not worry about it. So, the art of survival, thinking out of the box. What I realized after I put that picture up there is that I am in Texas and most people don't use bananas here. So that did kind of concern me after I did it, and I thought, okay, thinking out of the box, I hate that cliche. I use it a lot, but I hate it. I hate it with a passion because it's one of those cliches you hear over and over and over. And what you got to do with WooCommerce, especially if you're a shop owner or you're not into, okay, I need to do this customization, although I never say don't do customization. Do it when you need it. There's times when you got an extension and you're saying, man, I've used this extension forever and ever. Why in the world did I buy it? Because now I'm not using it. So think of what you can do. You have this tunnel vision when you look at what a plugin or extension does. I've used the bookings extension for years, probably ever since it's come out. And I used it for my one-on-one booking. Hey, makes sense. At a point, I dropped that service, and there was a little bookings plugin, all sad and lonely, and I thought, can I use this in some other way? So I put it kind of in the side pocket there, and what I realized is when I started doing sponsored posts, and I'm doing those sponsored posts on specific days that when somebody buys or purchases a sponsored post, they can choose which day they want by using the bookings plugin, which makes the process a whole lot easier because we don't have to go back and forth with dates. So take those kind of things and think a little bit, okay, bookings, booking hotel, booking restaurant, booking whatever, booking slots for the sponsored post, maybe that doesn't come to your mind. Same with WooCommerce tabs. How many of you use WooCommerce tabs? I love that thing. And maybe it's because I'm not a customizer, but I can put as many tabs in that are unique to a specific product. Now I understand you don't want to put too many in there, but at the same time, you want to be able to give people the right information when they're there so you can add these custom tabs. If there's custom FAQs, if there's custom details, anything custom to that product, it's easy to do. And I've used that thing hundreds and hundreds of times for different reasons. So you always want to be thinking with plugins, even with themes, think out of the box. Think how will they work in a different way that they're not really meant to work, or actually they, in their marketing, they say, use it for this, 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 but there's probably a dozen or more other things you can use it for. And that's what I love about WooCommerce. So that is kind of how I got to where I am. Not super exciting, but it's been a lot of work. I love it. Thank you. This is where you can find me.